Welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. We're going to talk some more about Pete Buttigieg and his performance or ideas or goals as Transportation Secretary. We need to talk a little bit about the nature of government. The government serves a couple of purposes, okay? Primary purpose is to protect and maximize your freedoms and liberties. Potentially even increase those freedoms and liberties. Now, let's talk about healthcare and travel. Healthcare is not a human right. Healthcare is a provision of healthcare is a goal, an admirable goal of a society. It is not, however, a human right. Travel is one of the 4 or 5 core oldest all-time human rights. Okay? The right to travel, the right to just get up and go, get the fuck out, is one of the absolute most fundamental rights we have. This will get important later, probably in the series as we talk about Transportation Secretary and his job, his duties, as it applies to individual liberty. Now, you can make the argument that healthcare is a human right in the sense that self-care, access to, ability to take care of yourself, to apply your own healthcare, is indeed a fundamental human right. However, very little of what is considered government healthcare or healthcare as a human right people has that application. It's someone else telling you how to take care of your body, regulating your access to drugs, medicines, whatever. It's not, oh, you have a fundamental right to take care of yourself. In fact, the biggest argument in favor of most of this regulation, according to most of the people who regulate, is that you're too dumb to take care of yourself. Okay? I have actually seen people apply that to travel, especially within the past year. Back to it. Secondary purpose. There's a couple secondary purposes of government. Remember that primary purpose is to expand, protect and expand your individual liberties and rights. That is what government is for. Society is for figuring out what to do with those rights, okay? Take care of each other, go to church, tithe, charity, all the stuff that, generally speaking, progressives think must be mandated because they're too selfish to do it without someone forcing them, and they assume someone else's motives on top of that. Whatever. Secondary purposes. Ensuring the security of your nation, group, state, whatever is covered by the government. Now, I think that the nation-state has been a very good development over history, evolutionary speaking, for civilization, for mankind. And yes, it's possible that we have post-national state levels that we can achieve, where we're dealing with different groups, free associative groups, whatever. But right now, governments apply mostly to nations. There's nothing wrong with that. The security of your nation, that's what we're going to go, community, state, federation, whatever, is a secondary purpose of government, and it's a very valid one, because you cannot be secure in your rights without some ability to trust that the hordes, the hordes of whoever, aren't going to come over the hill and take you slave tomorrow. Okay? And yes, for a lot of people, especially in the progressive world, that isn't a real threat anymore. That can't happen anymore. I've been to other countries. I've been to the Middle East. I've been to Asia. I've been to Africa. And it can happen. So, security is definitely part of your secondary roles. Infrastructure, providing the means for you to exercise your rights, is also a secondary purpose of government. And where that comes in is there's that bridge, okay, between the individual and society. That bridge is not usually the government, okay? Should not usually be the government, but there are cases where government is necessary, okay? Public lands are necessary. There is no successful real world tested ever situation where all private land ownership has worked with civil liberties, basic human rights, access to travel, the ability to go hunt, the ability to grow your own food. You have to either guarantee that everybody has their adequate private property, which is total socialism, or you have to have public lands. One or the other. Roadways, at a minimum, are a public land. So we have a transportation secretary who gives no consideration at all to national security. I've been listening to the guy. It's kind of a big deal right now because he's made this into a socialist theme argument. He is playing perception games. He's not doing anything real. How are we going to pay for infrastructure? Infrastructure. No one even knows what he means by infrastructure, okay? Is it repairing the interstates? No, roads bad. Cars bad. Okay, but we're going to tax cars to pay for trains. Okay, what's the ridership level? Okay, how does your rail-based, because you don't want roads, so we don't want buses, how does your rail-based transportation infrastructure actually work? What's the ridership? How is this going to operate? How does this improve national security? How does this worsen national security? What does this do for the freedom of travel? Can I go on foot and just walk down the railway? Because freedom to travel is up to me, okay? I understand that there are some theoretically necessary, I'll accept that there's some of it is necessary, regulation of things that go 100 miles an hour and weigh 5,000 pounds. Maybe we need to have a little bit of regulation about where you can go 100 miles an hour. But you can't regulate to the point where people aren't allowed to walk. You'll notice out west, where I live, that people sometimes walk and bicycle on the interstates. There's a reason for that. Interstates are not generally pedestrian or bicycle friendly. However, you have a fundamental right to travel. And in places where the road construction by the government has narrowed it down to the interstate or nothing, and there's sections out here where that's the case, you have to allow people to travel. It is a fundamental human right. So people walk on the interstate because it is literally the only road. Okay? And that's not, it's the only place, it's the easiest way to get to Circle K. That's not what we're talking about. Okay, we're talking about, say, the pass between Sparks and USA Parkway up on 80, okay? Not even USA Parkway, but Waltham Way. There's a section of road there where there is literally no other way through, okay? There's no dirt road, there's no frontage road. To get out of Reno, Sparks, going east, it narrows down to the section of a couple miles where it's only Interstate 80. It's the only thing you've got, and people can walk on it. People can ride their bikes on it. It's just life. Then you have to get off. It literally has sign, bicycles must exit, okay? When you get to a point where you have another route. That's fine, but fundamental human right is travel. Our current transportation secretary, Pete Buddyplug, doesn't seem to understand that. He doesn't have that in his vision, okay? He has a vision. And his vision is, quite frankly, extremely urban-centered, but also unrealistic. I don't understand anything about how he's got national security concerns in his viewpoint at all. Okay, nothing. I've been listening to him. I've been researching this. There's nothing there. He is not concerned about national security at all. And transportation, logistics is the fundamental, hugest, biggest part of national security in that respect. Okay, you have to be able to get goods and services to people or to defense installations or what have you. And he seems to be very unaware of that, okay? Everything is about trying to take the mythical urban poor who can't get a good job because it requires a car to get a good job and change the world so that you don't need a car. Ever. Whew. I don't even understand how he gets there. Okay, we'll talk about that in another video. But he's literally taking the people who don't need the cars because they live in a place where having a car doesn't do you any good, but they need to have access to all the stuff that people with cars have. But he doesn't understand that a lot of that has to do with like where you live. We'll get to that. That's a much deeper topic. Right now, we're just going to finish the video talking a little bit more about national security. The ability to travel, the ability to change, to modify, to travel at will, to have a transportation network that is flexible is a core element of your national security. Pete Buttigieg wants to get rid of that. Okay? He wants to take us back to a system where only certain vehicles can get on certain travel paths. Rail, for example. He wants everything on rail. That's not very flexible. It's very limited, and frankly, it's a bad idea. Just from every point of view, it's a bad idea. I'm not saying that mass transit is bad. Okay? I'm not saying that rail is bad. Rail is fantastic. It's a great, super efficient way to move certain types of goods, certain distances. But it's not how you serve your city. It's not how you deliver goods to a grocery store, for example. Okay? So I think he's missing that. I think this is one of the core elements where you can look at him and say, yeah, he's playing socialist games, but he doesn't actually understand the territory that he is covering. So stay sideways, and I'll give you some more in a little bit.